Greetings, sir and sirettes, and welcome back to From the Depths with me, Lathrix, and of course, welcome back once more to the Sandbox mode. In today's episode, we are going to begin construction of our newest vessel, either a battleship or a frigate, I'm not quite sure just yet. It's going to be a much larger vehicle than our previous designs, in at least terms of firepower. For too long, we have been shackled by the idea of being fair to the game and being, well, not so overpowered we completely run over every single enemy, such as being forced to weaken our missiles on the bunker, or being forced to, well, tone down the Spite and its ultimate damage capabilities. But today, we are starting our venture against the Twin Guard, and as a result, I think it's about time we can be a little bit silly with our designs and a little bit more extreme with them. So, I'm just currently placing down a basic framework for how large I want this vehicle to actually be. Of course, this will eventually be the deck, and doing this first tends to give me at least a good idea about how big and what kind of shape it will eventually take. I think that would probably be more than big enough, so I'm going to actually start shrinking it down a little. This is probably where the end point's going to be, so thinking somewhere around here, we start curving it in. Something a little bit different. I've always been a big fan of split hulls, and I think if I'm going to make one huge ship which dwarfs even the bunker, it really does deserve to have a twin hull, at least part of the way down. I am tempted to convert the entire thing into essentially two interlocking hulls, because that would be pretty darn cool, although most likely it's going to end up with these two reconnecting somewhere down the line, and then having a more traditional back of a battleship style. Now, I will say one thing about the size of this vehicle. I still don't want it to be absolutely ludicrous. I think 20,000 blocks is my absolute limit to at least allow some other vehicles to spawn. Of course, if we outnumber the enemy, we will of course have more of the 25,000 allotment of blocks, but I would like to almost ensure that at any given time we can have an extra few ships if I so desire, which I probably will. Now, am I going to continue this, or should I stop already? I think if they do reconnect, they should reconnect a lot earlier than what I just said. Probably before they get halfway at least, so we should start merging them now. But I think I'm going to have a quick look-see at just how it looks after I keep the style of them both being separate for a while. The basic shape has been decided. It's going to start off as a split hull, which very quickly comes back together in two major pieces. These two pieces will bridge the gap between the two hulls, and will between them hold the command bridge, which will be much higher than the actual deck itself. Just beyond the second connection point, we have the main connection, which will actually completely make the two hulls one again. And that will be the very, very basic outline. I'm liable to change things here and there, but honestly, I think this could look something rather beautiful. So what I'm going to do now is fill in the deck, fill it full of wood and metal, try to make it look at least nice. Of course, you'll build on top of that and underneath that, and in addition, we will try to add a little bit of depth to the thing so we can have a much better look at it, or at least a look at it in 3D rather than just being on a 2D plane. There we are. I've just added a bit of flesh to this thing so we can actually look at it with a bit more of a critical eye and consider our possibilities. Ultimately, I do like this idea. I do have a few problems with it that I'm going to try and fix as we go, but yeah, I really love the front section. I think that looks really impressive, and particularly when it's all fully fleshed out and it has its weaponry attached, I think this will be fantastic. And think of all the mega weapons we could perhaps put down this line. Perhaps a very powerful front-facing laser, perhaps torpedoes, who knows? The sides can hold turrets. I think it looks like it's got a lot of potential. If I can actually make it live up to that, I'm not so sure just yet, as this is quite an ambitious build, but I will try my best. The back section I'm not entirely happy with, as, well, I just don't know how this is going to round off completely with the rest of the style, so what I'm probably going to do is allow this to split once again, to have a split section here and a split section here just after the main joint. That gives it a more of a solid feel, a more of a themed feel throughout the entire vessel. Also, this thing is going to be very, very big. It's already 1,296 blocks, and it's only a skeleton. What I'll most likely do is not have it that deep. I think I'll go down one more level, perhaps two, but that's it. So nowhere near as deep as the bunker and the spite, which both go down about 15 levels. This one will only go down about 6 or 7. That way we can save blocks in that kind of regard. One of the big benefits, however, to having it so huge is that making it, well, actually usable in terms of your player being able to move around the entire vessel should be really easy. I now have the depth I'm actually happy with, so I would like to go a bit deeper, but honestly we are going to have to stop now, otherwise our block count will be absolutely insane. So with that, I think it's about time we start working on the very basic deck and sorting out the rooms for these two these two segments, let's call them, the two side segments. The body will be made last because it will also contain the keel underneath the water, and this will go a lot deeper than the two sides. The entire structure will. I kind of want a little glass viewing area under the water on this one, or perhaps in between them, depending on how the command bridge actually takes place. But yeah, so this is the height of the deck. And like I was saying, we will definitely be building higher than it and around it in order to give a bit of depth to the actual deck itself. I don't want the deck to be visible from the sides, is what I'm essentially saying. Because although wood looks awesome, and I'm really trying to use it more in my builds now than just pure solid metal, even if I am going for a more industrial look, it doesn't look right when you start putting it on the edge and the sides of a metal vehicle, particularly one of this size. So I'm going to go ahead, fill this thing with wood and try and make a nice pattern out of it, since the regular single blocks look a little bit off if you ask me, and then we'll be back to start segmenting this properly and deciding what room's going to do what. And so finishes off the wood, and the metal on the sides as well. I think this is how we're going to go with it. I was planning to add a bit more wood than is currently there. However, I would like these sections here to be very heavily fortified from all angles, as most likely the engines will be going here and on the opposite side as well, as I want this thing to be completely symmetrical on both sides. But also, the big problem is with wood, it's really obvious when the pattern isn't quite right. It's one of those items you can currently use, in particular with the new skin, where if you start to mess up designs, it becomes very, very obvious. Whereas metal blends a lot better and enables you to be a little bit more silly with the design. So if this was metal I was filling in with, I would probably just destroy this and go full out wood, just for the aesthetic. But for now, I'm pretty happy with this. Once again, I will be trying to build as much as possible on the outside and on the top of the deck to make it less of a very obvious transition as well. Possibly some wooden structures going into the metal, metal into the wood. You get the general gist. So it's time to figure out what's going inside and where. Most likely, this section here will be the engines, not quite at the very front, and with the... I think this is the widest section of the ship. Yep, just about. This is the widest section of the ship, which will enable me to do some more segmented armor on the side, of course, as in armor, gap, you get the idea, all the way here, and also a little bit more on the inside, allowing for a really, really tightly packed and defended engine, where, hopefully, I will still have enough space to actually have a walkway for the bridge to go into. Once again, I would love if this entire ship, or at least most of it, is actually walkable, so you can walk from one end to the other without going outside. That would be fantastic. So, let's start doing that. Let's actually finish the engine area, completely finish it off, so we've got at least the first section of the ship finished for the rest to be modelled on after. At least I think that makes more sense, or at least some sense, which occasionally happens on these videos. Now that the outside wall has 3 layers of segmented armor and the inside has 2 layers of regular armor, it's time to make this even more secure. The engines have been placed, and although they are a little bit broken at the moment as the copy and paste may have duplicated the wrong section so it's not as efficient as it used to be, it's still a decent engine. There's definitely things you can improve with it, but this is one of those lazy but functional engines. But it does need to be protected a little bit more. With the wooden ceiling, we need to make sure that this actually has an armoured shell of its own, and I want it to look cool. So what I'm going to do is start work on this. Now, I'm probably going to change the colour of the metal for this to a very light one. There we go. As engines are power and such, and I'm going to utilise lighting and glass. Whoops-a-daisy. Oh, that will destroy that, oh well. Oh, that's a good point, actually. With the doubles, oh well, we can make it have double glass. But yeah, like I was saying, with the double superchargers there, it does make it a little bit awkward and the pattern a little bit wrong, but that's fine. So, like I was also saying, we're going to be using glass and lighting to make the thing look a bit more active than it normally does. Let's see, where are you, supercharger? Why am I blind? There we go. That's not even what's meant to be there, that's the silly thing, but there we are. Regular colouring, and then now what colour should our engines be on the inside? I'm just going to do this side then the other. I'm thinking either a bright blue or a very, very eerie green, or both. No, I think blue would probably be the best here, honestly. So let's go 1, then 1, 2, 3, U, and so on. Well, there we are. The main part of the engine block is now completed, and I must say I am very, very happy with it. Although it's a little bit space, well, greedy, it is very well defended and gives a nice sci-fi look to the whole room. Observe the blue light, but as I did say, it is a bit of a killer of space. So let's figure out how we're actually going to enter this room and exit with ease. And I'll figure out a good way to actually connect this to the ceiling in a second, so that the wooden ceiling is no longer such a huge weak point. The obvious path would be to follow the path along here. This way, there's still a too wide path, it's not a massive detriment, and we can walk there nicely. Which means the other side we could actually border off, meaning that it looks more like a... like it's more directional, like you're being forced along one direction as if it's been built with that purpose in mind, which would not be bad at all. So I think that's exactly what we're going to go with. Let's just get the thing I'm trying to look for here. There it is. Turn it that way, and put one there. Put one there. There we go, just saved one block. And we'll have the entrance somewhere here. So this should connect to the engine, I imagine. So what we could do is just literally connect it to the engine, or we could have it with beams as if it was connected later, and I actually prefer that idea, as if it's been hard pointed into the wall as opposed to simply, well, placed there by accident. There we go. Then we add the slopes back. We could make this too wide as well. In fact, yeah, I'm probably definitely going to make this too wide. I can never find this one because I use it so rarely. It's one of those cubes which just doesn't get much use, and as a result, every time I try and look for it, I actually have to look for it, whereas some of the others, it's just natural now which one goes where. There we go. Okay, I like that a lot again. So we have the door over here, and of course, this will be attached to the main bridge itself, or of course we could have the door a little bit further on, and then connect to this connection point, which actually might be better, as we could use that as a tunnel from one side to the other, in addition to the main bridge connecting to the tunnel, which would probably be better. So there we are, the main engine's done. Now let's start making this look a little bit more presentable. Let's smooth out the edges and make it look more like a walkway than it is currently. Well, I think I've spent just about enough time on the engine room today, and ultimately, I am fairly happy with it. We've now put down some lovely wooden panelling so that we can actually walk around, and we've even added doors to both this side and of course the other. The biggest thing though is I've now attached metal to the top of the engine and the bottom, so it's actually got 3 layers of metal on the bottom, two on the top to provide an added bit of armour. This is probably the most defensible engine I have ever made, and it's in a very highly defended room, so this should survive pretty much everything. And the reason why I'm doing this, of course, is because on such a huge ship with such a huge surface area, shields are very, very vital, so you don't end up having huge areas just basically knocked out of existence. And of course we can walk all the way across here as well, these lovely wooden beams attaching it to the engine, followed by another area which is yet to be finished. So we have this area and the area at the front. Now the area at the front I'm purposely leaving undone right now because, if I go out of my body, this area and probably this area here will become weapons in the not so distant future. And so we continue actually building. The big thing I want to do now, before we finish today's episode, we need to finish off the basic hull shape. Now, I'm not including the bridge, because that all depends on how many blocks I have spare at the end, but this area here I want to finish, and as a result, I've started building out the 2 spikes, and also upgraded the graphic settings. Hurrah for that. There we are. So we should have better looking shadows whilst we're in the sandbox mode. I keep forgetting to put all the settings back to max outside of the huge battles, and then it ends up with me thinking to myself, why are the shadows looking so poor or non-existent? Oh, because I'm a dum-dum. How much further do we want this? Honestly, what we should probably do is have it so the spike doesn't go much further than this. So not that much further, so maybe about 3 or 4 more with the 2 meters, and then we shall continue with the 1 meters to make it a little bit more curved in at the very end. I think that seems reasonable. There'll probably be very little actually going back here, as I haven't really accounted for this in our block count, so it's probably just be free space. You could use it for ammo storage. Actually, now I've said that, that's exactly what they're going to be. The 2 back sections here will be ammo storage, and of course the ammo feeders, as I really want to use a lot of advanced cannons on this thing. So that's what the back here will be used for. Ammunition processing. And 1 more, 2 more, 2 more I think, okay. And we'll put that back as well, then we'll start to smooth this off like we have done with the front. Okay, and I do want this to have a smooth ending like that. Where does that end up connecting to? Okay, that's okay. But we don't want it all the way back here, though. We want it a little bit further out. Once again, we'll smooth this out later. But for now, that is that. Okay. I like that a lot. So let's continue with bulking out this bit. And let's have a look how it looks with the total hull complete. Again, excluding the bridges. Well, we've hit a bit of a snag. Although I wanted to build a little bit more before I actually started speaking again, I need to address a very big problem. And of course, this problem is the sheer size of this vessel. Although I wanted it to be extremely large, I was hoping that the huge amount of blocks gouged out of the middle would enable us to have a ridiculously huge ship, able to span over a full resource zone, and ultimately be rather impressive in sheer size and hopefully in the future in looks as well. However, we have already hit 10,000 blocks, and although my goal is 20,000, I do believe that once we add all the innards, all the ammo storage and the guns and everything else, and the building on top, which I'm very keen on doing quite a bit of, it's going to exceed this limit. So I have 2 options. Either A, shrink down the bottom of the ship, or even cut out a section of the ship here to actually lower the block count, which is most likely what's going to happen, or B, we simply continue. We have a capital ship, a ship I am proud of and I bring out on special occasions to wreak havoc upon whichever enemy I choose. A ship which I continue to improve in the future and ultimately have as a labour of love, something which I go back to every now and again just to finish off the building, do a bit here, a bit there, and as updates hit the game, like the advanced cannons, we keep on updating the weapons. And I'll be honest, despite me really being against the latter option for quite a bit of this playthrough, I think it is time that perhaps I do look into making some ridiculous builds just for myself and a bit of fun for the campaign. I will still aim for 20,000 blocks, although we are almost hitting 11,000 already, and I will take precautions to avoid hitting 25,000 so that we can at least bring some ships. If this can be accompanied by 2 widows, I am happy. Those are only 2.3 thousand blocks, and if we overwhelm the enemy in our naval size, we will be able to bring destroying them easily. But I think really maybe a bit of both would be the better option. Perhaps causing this spike to be a bit smaller at the front, which ultimately is just going to be one single gun on both sides, cutting that back and thus saving perhaps 1,000 blocks here or there, a little bit of skimming, I think would be the best option, but ultimately I think 20,000 will be reached. I don't know if we're going to go over it, but it's definitely going to be reached. But on a brighter note, I have almost finished the back. I have finished curving it and making it all look nice like that, so it's all nice and smooth, and I'm now just about to add the flooring to it because, well, we're missing a huge chunk of floor here right now, which isn't very becoming. And so the hull of the ship is done. We have flooring, we have the engine room, and we have the basic shape all done. We also have a bunker currently stuck by the ship because I spawned it in to actually check the size of this thing in comparison, and forgot that I accidentally started a race earlier because I was checking out how that worked. So the poor thing's trying to go through the rings, even though, well, something's in the way. But seriously, as a size comparison, this thing is massive. Although, of course, if you did combine the gap, so both sides are touching each other, it would look far, far smaller and far more like a spear. But yeah, I'm ultimately very happy with this. I've saw a few things I think I'm going to change off camera before the next episode, but by the time the next episode does roll around, the block count issue will be solved one way or the other. Most likely, I am going to simply scale down the ship a little bit, as I don't want to be too overpowered. The last thing I want is to reach the Twin Guard or the Steel Striders and simply have built a boat that's so big and have so much on it that it beats them by default, even if it's not as well designed as the enemy ship. Also, I do apologise for that little stammery burst there. But ultimately, well done Bunker for finishing the race, but ultimately, we are done. And next episode, we'll be adding our weapon systems and making this thing a lot more deadly. Thank you so much for watching. If you have enjoyed today's episode, then of course, likes, favourites, shares, comments, all that good stuff helps out me, helps out the channel, and most importantly, shows that From the Depths is a series you wish to see continued in the future. And if you have any names for this ship, feel free to leave it in the comments below. I have no idea just yet what I'm actually going to be calling this monstrosity.